Join me today as we head into the grocery store and we pick up a beautiful pot roast for dinner. So today I'm going to show you how I make a roast. I found these wonderful roasts on sale. I only bought one, but they were $5 a pound. And I decided I am going to make a roast. It just sounded so good for dinner. So I'm gonna make some sweet potato fries, some roast. It's gonna be to die for. And I have this wonderful recipe for some gravy from the drippings from the roast. So I hope you'll join me today. This is gonna be a delicious dinner that's gonna last me like through the month. I'm gonna start off by melting some butter and putting in a couple tablespoons of canola oil. And that is how I'm gonna get my roast browned before I start cooking it. So I'm gonna put in some butter with some oil, and I wanna get that nice and browned. In the meantime, we're gonna make our seasoning platter to put our roast in. I've taken about 1/2 cup of flour, and I'm gonna mix in some seasoning salt. I'm gonna put in about 1/4 teaspoon of seasoning salt. And then I'm gonna be putting in some fresh onion powder salt that I prepared myself. So I grew some onions in my garden and I dehydrated a bunch of them. And I also made some homemade onion salt. So I'm gonna put about 1 teaspoon of that in my seasoning mix here. And I'm also I'm not gonna put any regular salt, but I am gonna put in some freshly ground pepper. I'm gonna put in about 1 tablespoon of garlic. And then I'm gonna be putting in some celery salt, about 1/2 teaspoon. And that's some celery salt that I made. And I've also got some herbs from my garden. These are rosemary, thyme, basil, and Italian parsley. So I'm gonna put in about 1 tablespoon of those. These are wonderful. I use these in just about everything I make. It just makes everything taste so good. The smell of that just smells so delicious. All right, so I'm just gonna give this a little stir. Actually, I'm gonna use my hands. I wanna make sure that this is really mixed together well. I'm actually gonna wash my roast real quick before I put it in this flour seasoning mixture, because I want to wash the roast first of all, but I also want to make sure that it sticks real good to the flour. So let me do that and I will be right back. And while I was inspecting my roast, I just saw that over on the back side, it really has a lot of additional fat, which I'm gonna trim off. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and dredge our roast in this wonderful flour mixture. Just like this. I wanna get all 4 sides. And then we're gonna brown it. I use a cast iron skillet on mine, but you use whatever you like. You want it nice and hot because you want it to sear the meat. Okay, when you've got a nice brown side on one side, then we're just gonna turn it over and get a nice brown on the other. Okay, so we've got a nice crust on both sides of our meat. So all we're gonna do is throw it in our crock pot, just like this. Now this isn't gonna go to waste, all these yummy little flavors. I've been boiling some water. Put about 1 cup of water in here. Woo! Just like this. But what we're gonna add to this is an ancho chili. We're gonna put that in there. And we're also gonna put some of these dehydrated onions that I grew from my garden. We want those to break down. If I was putting in a fresh onion, it'd be about maybe a nice large onion. But we're gonna put this in here. We want this chili to soften up. Now we're gonna put this in with our roast to cook all day. But what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add a little bit of this Better Than bouillon. This stuff is so good. We're gonna add a nice heaping teaspoon of that, just like this. Put it right in there. We want it to all kind of meld these flavors together. Okay, now we're not gonna add anything else to this. These are gonna be the flavors that we're looking for. And it is gonna be such a good roast. You'll see, oh my gosh. So we want this bouillon to really break up. That's why I didn't just put it in there with the roast. I'm just gonna kind of let this simmer for about 5 minutes till it's all kind of softens up and comes together. And then we're gonna pour this over our roast in the crock pot. Okay, our chili is done. So all we're gonna do is move this right into our pan. I wanna put this on the bottom right underneath my meat. And we're gonna take this delicious broth mixture and we're gonna move this into our crock pot. I wish you could smell this. It smells so good in here. So I am gonna go ahead and just pour this right over my mixture here. I'm gonna put some of those onions down in the juice and I'm gonna leave some of them right on top of the meat. And we are gonna set this on high for about 3 hours, and then I'm gonna set it on low until dinner. So you might be wondering why I made so much of this seasoned flour, and I'm not gonna throw it away. I'm just gonna put it in a bag, and tonight, after our roast is all done, I'm gonna make some really delicious gravy. So I'm just gonna set this aside, just a little bit, about a half a cup, and we'll use whatever we need from that to make a yummy, yummy gravy. Now, I've found with time that the best way to add flavors to your food are to use flavors. So there's so many wonderful herbs and seasonings and things that we can add to our food. Now, you saw the things that I put into my roast. If you want to add something different or take something out that you don't like, those are just the things that I add when I make a roast. And it makes everything smell good, it makes it taste better, and you'll see what it's all done. It's gonna be pull apart, delicious roast. So not everybody is a sweet potato fan. I am. I love sweet potatoes. I could eat them every day of the week, and I do eat a lot of sweet potatoes. But you know, most people think, oh, it's the kind you have at Thanksgiving with the brown sugar. But you know, there's so many ways you can make sweet potatoes. You can roast them, you can put them in a bowl, you can have sweet potato fries. There's just so many things that you can do. So what I do is I start off by peeling my sweet potatoes. Now, these aren't actually sweet potatoes. These are red yams. I prefer these over sweet potatoes, but honestly, I like both. And you know, that's another thing. There's so many varieties of sweet potatoes that you can buy now that are just so good. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all these peeled, and then I'm gonna get them all prepared for the freezer. So this is gonna be really easy tonight. I think roast is probably one of my top 3 or 4 meals that I can have. I just absolutely love it. All right, so let me finish these. I've got about 4 potatoes I need to peel. Now, I actually have a French fry cutter. I have that I use for potatoes. It makes like the perfect French fry. But I actually like my sweet potatoes a little bit larger than the French fries cut it. So I just cut those the size I like. And I just put them on a pan or two, and I freeze these, and they just make the best air fryer sweet potatoes. I mean, there's no reason to buy all this stuff. If you can make it yourself or grow it yourself, that's even better. So this is kind of an overloaded pan, but I'm gonna be having some of these for dinner, so it's gonna be fine. All right, I'm gonna stick these in the freezer just like this, and then I'll put them in a plastic bag a little bit later, and I'll just take out what I need. So I typically put a piece of plastic down on whatever it is I'm gonna be making my sweet potato fries with. And then I just take out as many sweet potatoes as I want for my meal. I love sweet potatoes, so I'm gonna have quite a few. All right, and then I pour a little drizzle of olive oil on, just like that. Not too much, but enough that I can have the different things coating it. I take a little bit of pink Himalayan sea salt, like that. Take a little bit of pepper. And I take a little bit of garlic. Not a lot of garlic, but I just want a little bit to season it. And then I just pull up my little plastic. I do this instead of getting a plastic bag, and it's just a way to kind of coat your sweet potatoes a little bit better. I just kind of move them around a little so the top part isn't the only part that gets the seasoning. Then I just put them down on the tray. Again, I just take this and just kind of try to get as much of the seasoning on each of the potatoes as possible. And there we go. I'm just gonna put those in a preheated oven. Actually, I'm gonna air fry them. So I'm gonna start on one side for 10 minutes and then I'm gonna turn them. And then I'll show you how we get the rest of our meal ready. So before I get going with the rest of my meal, I'm just gonna take the rest of these sweet potatoes and I'm just gonna put them in a bag and stick them back in the freezer. Now you could also cut these sweet potatoes into little small chunks if you wanted to have them for casseroles or soups or whatever it is you like. All right, I'm gonna throw this in the freezer. I've got some canned green beans. I'm just gonna go ahead and put those in a pan and stick them on the stove. So the next thing I'm gonna do is start making my gravy. So I'm gonna take just a little bit of butter because I just wanna brown a little bit of that. Remember the seasoned flour that we had when we were putting our meal together earlier? Well, we're gonna take a little bit of that seasoned flour, not a lot, but we're gonna take enough that we wanna be able to make a nice little roux. And then we're gonna put the same amount of flour in our roux. Just like this. Maybe just a hair more, not much. There you go. We're just gonna give that a little stir. We want that to turn brown, get cooked. So we're gonna let that cook up for just a couple of minutes. And now we're gonna start adding our liquid. Just a little bit to start with. Now I'm going to be adding a little bit of milk to it. So my go-to when I'm making gravy is evaporated milk. I just love it. I couldn't tell you why, but I just love it. Just makes a nice thick gravy. It's just so good. I just love it. So that's all the seasoning that we're gonna pull up in this. I am gonna put a little bit more milk in it. And I'm gonna let this cook for a little while. I want it to cook down and turn into an actual thickened gravy. Look at that gorgeous roast. So we're gonna go ahead and cut it. Now you always wanna cut your roast across the grain. You don't wanna cut it with the grain, you wanna cut it across the grain. And so you're just gonna cut it into slices. Now, I'm not gonna cut a whole bunch of it just because, you know, I'm only gonna eat a little bit. But see how nice this cuts up? It's like butter. This stuff is so delicious. So I've got my roast, just like that. And I'm gonna let it rest for about 5 minutes until the rest of my meal is ready to serve. All right, it's time to plate up our dinner. So I'm gonna get a couple pieces of roast. It smells so good. And the next thing I'm gonna do is put some gravy on my meat. Now, these were some green beans that I grew this summer. They are absolutely fabulous. So we are gonna try our dinner in just a moment. I'm gonna grab the sweet potatoes. So let's give this dinner a try. We're gonna start with the gravy and the roast beef. Oh my gosh. That is so unbelievably good. None of those instant crock pot pour-in things you put over your food. Make your own. Let's try our green beans. These are fresh out of my garden. Every summer I grow these. This is the best meal. And we're gonna try one of our sweet potato fries. Delicious. Not to mention, this is all on plan for me, except for a little bit of the flour, but I'm okay. So thank you for watching. Make yourself something delicious tonight. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel. Give me a like, a thumbs up, or ring the bell for future notifications, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.